All right, the second main methodology that you can use for unit conversions is a ratio-based method. The idea here is if you take a look at this thing in the middle here that we're trying to convert, uh, you can actually take it and you can multiply it by the number 1 as many times as you want. So if you take 5 meters squared per second squared and multiply it by 1, you haven't actually changed your quantity. And this is the basis behind this particular type of method. Now, the trick here is to recognize that you can express the number 1 in multiple ways. So if our goal is to convert centimeters squared to, or centimeters, or to convert our quantity to units in centimeters squared per minute squared, we can actually use this multiplication by 1 to eliminate the units that we're trying to replace. So let's start with the meters squared here. So we have the number 1 here. We can take a look at our unit conversions here on the right-hand side, and it's possible for us to rearrange this unit conversion into a multiplication by 1. Right, so again, looking at the right-hand side, you can take this conversion ratio, 100 centimeters is equal to a meter. You can divide each side by a meter, and you'll get 100 centimeters over a meter is equal to 1. Or alternatively, you can divide both sides by 100 centimeters and get 1 is equal to meters over 100 centimeters. Now, once you've done this, the trick is to realize that you can use this to modify this quantity. I'm going to slide to the left here in order to eliminate, say, the meters squared that you're trying to get rid of. Now, in order to do this, what you're going to do is instead of multiplying by 1, you're going to multiply by something that is equivalent to the number 1, but gets rid of it. So what we can do here is instead of multiplying by 1, we can multiply by 100 centimeters is equal to a meter, because this is the same thing as the number 1. And what this will do is it'll start to cancel out the meter units that we want to get rid of. Now, we do have meters squared here, so you do have to remember that you not only need to multiply once by the number 1, but you have to multiply twice by the number 1. And the idea is once you've done this, this square meter here will cancel out with the meters here and the meters here that you need to have in order to get this to be in a number of centimeters. Now, you can put this together, and what you'll notice here is the number 5 will be left unchanged, and what we'll have here is 100 times 100, so 100 squared, and centimeters by centimeters. So we will have centimeters squared in the numerator, and seconds squared will be left in the denominator. And basically, we will repeat this process over and over and over again until we've solved our problem. Now, if you watch the previous methodology here, what you'll notice is this gets you to the same spot, more or less, that we got to before. The conversion ratio squared times the units squared. It just has extra steps in which you need to multiply by 1 multiple times. It's also more difficult because if you take a look at our choices of number 1 here, there are 2 of them, and you need to be able to pick the correct one. This is why the first method that we discussed is actually quite a bit more straightforward and easier to do than this particular methodology. In the previous methodology, which uses substitution, you don't have to think about which ratio you have. You don't have to apply these ratios multiple times in a row. It requires much less thought, which is why it's a much more robust method. Now, if we wanted to continue on with this, again, we have a second conversion ratio down here at the bottom. So what we need to do is we need to rearrange it so that it equals to 1, and it equals to 1 in such a way that it's going to cancel out the units that we want. The way to do this is what we're going to do is we're going to take our bottom conversion ratio here, and we're going to divide each side by minute. All right, so if we do so, we'll get 60 seconds over minute is equal to 1. And then what we can do is we can multiply our unit ratio by 1 twice. And the reason for this is going to cancel out the seconds squared with the 2 seconds that we have here. And so what this is going to leave us with is it's going to leave us with 60 squared per minute squared, like so. We can then, again, do the math in the order that we see it. We can do 5 times 100 squared times 60 squared. And putting all our numbers together will leave us with 1.8 times 10 to the 8 centimeters squared per minute squared. This is the second main way in which you can do this. However, Typically speaking, it leads to more errors than the first methodology. But it's perfectly valid if it's something that you feel comfortable in doing. The goal here is to make sure that you have a method that works well, and the ends pretty much justify the means.